rebooting.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. So great to meet you. I'll kick it off with an introduction in the video, but I just wanted to take a minute and just introduce you briefly here. One of the things that I have appreciated about learning about your background recently is all of these transitions that you've made, and it seems like you're always trying to go to something more or a better vision for your life, if you will. From your background, it's amazing. You went from Egypt to America, you got your PhD. Normally that'd be enough for people, but then you decided to go for executive coaching after doing 20 years of consulting. And now you've coached over 2,000 people. And so, Laura, you're an amazing, inspirational person. And I'm curious, what's driving you? What's behind all of your pursuit for something more?
Thank you, Devon. I've been always driven by something bigger. I'm always looking for what's next. I don't settle for a status quo. But I just want to, for the sake of clarity, I coached 3,000 sessions, but 500 people.
Okay, thank you for clarity.
Just not to give any. So 500 since I got certified by the ICF, International Coach Federation. Prior to that, I was a consultant in health information technology, and I coached many people. But before being the executive coach, before formally having that, and that was actually the driver. Like I saw how much people wanted to get better. And I was always asked, like, how can we become consultants? What can we do to do something similar to what you're doing now? Information technology applications in healthcare was very new. Like nobody really, 20 years ago, many organizations were still on paper. So everybody was curious to what's next. And then when they work with me on the projects, it's like, how can we do what you're doing? Or what would you, from the other things you saw in other organizations, what would you recommend we do to get to the next level? Like, how can I become a director? How I can become a VP? How can I get to the C-suite? And that was an eye-opening for me, to see how I can help people. And sometimes I say things not realizing how much it was an eye-opener for them. Like they never thought about it this way or never attempted to try it. So that's where I enjoy my work and really bring a passion and continue to feel excited about it.
Thank you for clarifying. Only 500 people in 3,000 sessions, right? Only that's a
only
that's
in
a
the
lot.
last 4 years. In the last so I pivoted to coaching early on in the pandemic. I finished one big project I was on around May, and that's where there was no travel, no whatever. So there was no really projects at the time. And I was thinking about coaching all along and taking some courses as time allowed. So not having work and being stuck at home in many ways, like many of us at that time, it was a good opportunity for me to catch up. And I knew Andrew Neitlich from the Center of Executive Coaching from a program he was offering at an organization was called WBAX. Now it's coaching.com. So I knew Andrew, I liked his style, and Andrew was a consultant before, so there was this kind of sense of he understands what my experience is, what I have seen, and this bridging, from consulting to executive coaching was a good thing for me. I felt like that was the right path, and I joined the Center for Executive Coaching and worked on it like double the time, morning and evening sessions, to finish the requirements and take the test, the ICF test. Got the first one, the ACC, Associate Certified Coach. And then as soon as I completed the requirements, I got the PCC, Professional Certified Coach. So I'm working now on the master. But that's a big endeavor. It needs more. It needs a lot of revisiting many of the coaching principles and competencies, and also time commitment, a lot of time commitment. So maybe by the end of this year or next year.
Wow, that's so amazing and so impressive to go so quickly through all of that. So I'm curious, how has that transition been for you since you've been through so many transitions? What's what's it like to be an executive coach compared to being a consultant?
It's amazing. It's beautiful. We do, after each session, many of the companies I work with have a feedback survey after the session. And the highest one is life-changing. That's like the best review you get. And then the one next to it is amazing. And every time I get life-changing, I kind of feel like, oh my God, like I just want to pause and let everything stop and think about it of how can one person in few minutes, like most sessions will not be longer than an hour, impact someone's life to that extent. And that's the power of coaching, in the ability to listen to what someone is experiencing and being able to reflect and get them to think about it. Like, is this true? Like asking them to, is this assumption true? Is the situation actually that, or is this your interpretation? And many times people do not we are moving very fast. Life moves very fast. And many companies, people are, especially executives, are so stressed in time. They kind of go from one meeting to the other. There is no time to stop and think. So it's the time they have for coaching, if they have the privilege to have a coach, is the only time they have to pause and think and challenge automatic thoughts, challenge assumptions. And then the ability to renew our minds. Can we reframe that? Can we think about it in a different context or from a different angle? And many times when we get to that point, that's kind of where people fear it's transformational.
Well, that feels really, I see the energy here of what makes you really like transforming or changing and positive influence in people's lives. So I'm curious, what has been the largest struggle that you're seeing with people maybe recently, maybe executives, and what's some guidance? Like if you were, imagine that someone in the audience that's listening right now is going through something similar to what most of the people coming to you are. What would that problem be and how would you advise them?
In most leadership, I think about that every day. So every day I take a few minutes and think of what were the themes that popped up in the coaching sessions I had. And I try to make connections. And recently, three executives from three different industries, the main thing they brought was effective communication, effective executive level communication. And it comes in different ways. Like some people are too vocal. People like get startled, like feel they are aggressive, and their peers or their teams feel like, oh, very hard to work with this person. They do not see it as aggressive. They feel passionate about it. They are speaking. But others who are slower or like to think about it feel that this person is aggressive, and then it shows up in reviews or feedback and it hurts them. Other people are the opposite. Other people are very conflict avoiding. So they don't want to bring up any contradictory view. But you cannot, in any organization, you cannot just agree with everything. There is always, pros and cons to every situation. So what happens with people who hold back? Usually they are people pleasers, they try to kind of make everybody feel good. Then they end up getting very frustrated. And the real point here from a coaching perspective is how can you go to meetings with a talking points, with an agenda, and not just sit and listen, like speak up, use your voice. Don't be afraid of conflict, like positive conflict or productive conflict. It's not a fight, not every discussion is going to be a fight. And that's where the work with the coach, the accountability or the follow-up, and because these things do not change overnight, right? You kind of develop self-awareness to monitor yourself. How am I showing up in meetings? How am I, the tone of voice, sometimes it's not about the words, but the tone of voice and the facial expressions. Like, can you say what you want to say with more melody versus an order or a command? Can you smile so you're not showing that you're upset? So these are subtleties, and I like to approach it from, can we improve like 1%? Like, can I do it 1% better every day? It's not gonna be, this is not like gonna be 180-degree change, because part of our communication style is part of who we are, part of our personality and how we were brought up. You know, some of it is like what you absorb from your family and what you have been doing for many, many years. So I like to encourage them and support them by saying, like, first be aware. Sometimes it's harder, and I go for more like specific things, like people who like to speak quickly and don't allow time for others to share opinions. I say, put a note. They use a yellow sticky note on your screen if it's a Zoom call, and say, pause, breathe.
Mm.
And kind of bit by bit, they start to embrace that style of communication. So communication is a big one, and then followed by, if not on the same level, executive presence.
Wow. And
I know.
you brought something really interesting that's really useful. I've seen the same in my career and my practice. I'm wondering, I had my last guest, or one of my last guests, was a female leader coach for software engineers. And she had something similar where she said she noticed that women tend to have trouble being disagreeable and kind of articulating what they want more. And men can come off as overly aggressive in some of her practice. And it's interesting, you brought that guidance of those two examples too. I was wondering if you noticed that there's these traits based off of our backgrounds from that perspective as well.
Right. And there are different ways to approach it. Like, you can leverage emotional intelligence tool to bring in emotional regulation. That's a big one. We work on it for both men and women from different angles. Like, how can we regulate emotions so we don't get too upset or overreact? Like, not swing. Like, you don't want the pendulum swinging from being very
Mm.
passive to very aggressive or lashing out at people. Like, how can we bring balance and regulate our emotions? And in regulating the emotion, and that was a big executive, actually, senior VP. I never forgot him. I'm not going to say the name of a company or anything, but he was specifically interested in emotional regulation because he used to be triggered. Like, he would see a solution and believe that this is the best thing to do. And he have the data and he's sure, there is no doubt. But the other people are not at the same level. They did not do all the research. They do not are not convinced yet by his position. His peers, actually, I'm not here even talking about people on it. So his peers would resist, like, no, we will not do that. No, that's not going to fly. And he gets upset and lash out at them.
Mm.
But working on it 1 year, this was a long coaching engagement. And we worked on managing triggers. And he took it to heart. Like, I gave him references, I gave him articles and books to read. And there are some good quality resources out there. And he took it to heart. The key thing in coaching is, if you have to embrace it. You want to be like coachable, what we tend to say, willing to change or willing to try, at least, try new thing. So he took it to heart. He practiced. He would, come back and tell me the scenarios and how he reacted. And his scores on the feedback improved. Like, he was uh, recognized by HR and by his boss that he did change. And that's, I think, the value of coaching is not just having time. Everything is great to have somebody to speak with and voice your concerns and try to adopt new behavior, but to actually see it in your 360 is obviously phenomenal, too. So I know it works. If you apply the work, if you work on yourself, if you try to change.
That's great. And I think that's an amazing way to frame it. It's kind of a forced self-reflection, but you can't force it, right? Like what you're saying, they have to be open to it. They have to be open to the process. And you've mentioned a few things. I really like the way you think here. It sounds like you think in frameworks, a lot. Every time you're talking through an example, you give an example of how you measure the impact or a behavioral trait to fix. And I know, at least you correct me if I'm missing something here. I saw you have some frameworks that you've developed, like the LEAP framework, or their frameworks you developed or used. And I'm curious, how do you use those tools, or what are some of your favorite frameworks that you use in your practice to help frame some of these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of great resources, I would say, out there if you have the ability to collect them, understand them, and be willing to experiment with them yourself, and then share them with the client at the right time. Like, not everybody is interested in a framework. Like, like sometimes it's like it can be overwhelming. So in some instances, I would share one or two pillars of the framework. Like, we don't need to overwhelm someone with an elaborate framework, but we can take one or two. So one of the foundational elements of many leadership frameworks is having clarity of vision, because you want to know what you want, what the company wants, and align them, have alignment and clarity. So I always start with that, but sometimes in the very first sessions, people are not ready to stretch their thinking. So we tend to revisit it again.
It,
Yeah.
it's such a powerful, it's such a deep question. Like, if you ask someone, I've asked people, what do you want? I feel like no one really, it's such a hard question. People don't really spend the time that it deserves, because it really requires you to dig deep. So if that's the beginning of clarity, how do you get people to explore that question?
Yeah, very good point. I'll give you an example. I had an executive in a pharmaceutical company, and he was overworked, as many. Obviously, it's a very tough industry in many ways, lots of benchmarks, and he was leading actually research and development. So working with very highly educated people, everyone is very opinionated, and he was always stressed out. You feel like by the end of the day, he doesn't have any energy. And he wasn't sure what he wants to do. Should he leave research and development and go and work in operations where things are much easier? Should he look for some other work, where he doesn't have to work all these long hours, and it's a very hard question to answer, like, it's someone's life, his livelihood. He had 3 kids and, lots of responsibility. And okay, so we need more clarity on what he really wants, what makes him happy, what makes him feel proud of himself, what's in his heart. And the only way to get to that, the only way to access that is doing something simple, but nobody likes to do it, unfortunately. I don't know why, is having some quiet time and reflecting and writing it down. Like, you have to give yourself, I would say, at least 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at the end of the day. So I don't ask them to do like longer sessions alone, because they don't have time. But if you just take 5 minutes, whether in the morning, drinking your coffee, tea, or whatever you like to drink in the morning, or as soon as you get to the office, before you go to meetings and get, busy with all the hassle that you have at work, just give yourself this gift of some quiet time and write down what's on your mind. What are you thinking about first thing in the morning? When you do it consistently, so it's not a one-time thing, you want to do it consistently, you start getting this clarity of what is really important to you. Whether you want to stay in the same company, you want to leave, you want to stay in research and development, IT, you want to go to operations, marketing, whatever. If you consistently listen to the voice inside you, in your heart, in your mind, you eventually develop this clarity.
Have you ever seen something transformational just from that exercise? And could you maybe give an example of it? Or I imagine someone came to you and said, I want to fix this. And then you gave them this exercise, and then they came back and said, I don't want to do that at all. I want to do something completely different. Was there ever a moment like that?
It was, the transformation was in having this certainty that I want to stay and I want to finish these projects I'm working on, that I have power within me to organize myself and not be hijacked and triggered and working, not having energy, working too much time, too much hours. But I want to stay. Like this was, and this actually what happened in this exact situation, where we, after 2 weeks, I think it was about 2 to 3 weeks of writing every day, what do I want? Asking your oneself, what do I really want? Where am I seeing value? Where am I seeing joy? Do I still like what I do? Do I still like this company, the teammates I have, my peers, my direct reports, my boss? And this person that I have in mind, he finally stopped fighting with himself that of whether I should stay or go, and decided to stay. Decided that he was happy here. His boss likes him. The work he's doing is good, and all what he needs to do was to delegate more. Like not hoard. Like some people like to hoard the work. They feel like they are the best ones to do it. Or actually, I noticed some people feel like my team is working so hard. I don't want to give them more work. So every request, this guy specifically that comes to mind now, every request for information that came to him, he took the time to go and find the information. And it's like when he told me that, and it was like, really? Like your team, you're the 30 people that report up to you. Nobody can go and find the information. You have to stop the other things you're doing in between your senior level meetings or presentations. You have to go and find information. He said, no, I think anyone on my team can get this information. So it's like, so why don't you delegate? Like, why don't you get the email request for some information and you send this email to someone on your team? Look, please, can you find this and respond to this email? Like, why not? He said, he thought about it and he said, I don't know, you're right.
It's amazing you work with such intelligent people, and then it seems like an obvious solution, but you need to be outside of the box. Or one of my favorite mentors is, right, she always tells me you have to be outside the jar to read the label, right?
That's a very good analogy. Yeah, that's a very
Yeah.
good analogy. Absolutely.
So that's really helpful. So you start with clarity. Hey, what do you want? What do you do after they get the clarity? What's after that step?
Yes. So after clarity, we try to seek alignment. So clarity and alignment tend to go hand in hand. Like once you're clear on what you want to align with those around you, align with company goals. Because if there is no alignment, then you want to transition to something else. Like you don't want to live in conflict all along. So once you have clarity on what you want, what you like, what is, and addressing your personal agenda, then we seek alignment with boss. Very important. For many years, I personally, in my life, my experience, never really focused that much on the relationship with my boss. But if you think about it, having a positive, empowering relationship with your direct manager is a transformative experience because in their hands lie your promotion, your reviews, the opportunities that will come. So that is something that I learned the hard way, and I try to share it with my clients all the time. Like you want, and they say there is actually research from Gallup that they say people leave bosses, they don't leave organizations. So that's an eye-opening thing if you think about it, like how can I help my boss? And then there is also some research that I found trying to show my clients how to look at it from a bigger picture. I found articles published in Harvard Business Review. What do you do if you don't like your boss? What do you do even if you think your boss is toxic or incompetent? And there is a strategy, there is a methodology to address that to the extent you want to play it out. If you feel it's too much, then you want to think of how you can change that. But it is that base pillar in our career advancement is how to align with your boss to help your boss succeed. Because when your boss succeeds, you will succeed, right? We're working on the same team, you know. So that's a foundational element.
Yeah, it's so true. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people fight with their bosses, and it's the biting the hand that feeds. You know, guys should get along and make sure that you're working towards the same vision here. But it's generally high performers too, and people who really care. Yeah. Right, there's the one that clash the most. So.
And it's hard to think about it like you're not telling them not to care, but it's either you can. I think the word that someone, one of the senior coaches that I follow, say like you are selling an idea, but the person who's making the decision is the final voice. So if you can convince them, if you can sell your idea, so if you think you're selling, you're not going to be fighting, you know, you're going to be more influential, more persuasive, show data, show examples, case studies, be pleasant, you know, don't be, you know, too aggressive or too, you know, extreme in your opinions. So you sell the idea. But if you can't sell it, then live with the decision that the decision maker did. You know, don't fight it, and don't badmouth them in their back. Like, don't go and say, "Oh, this whatever, you know, this idiot or this crappy thing." Like, buy into it. You know, that's kind of essential for your reputation, and because the idea behind it is what goes around comes around. So if you start badmouthing your boss, your team will badmouth you. And that will just feed into a toxic culture. Nobody's going to benefit from that.
Yeah, it's something you bring it so well. The concept of gossip, right? I see this a lot, and it feels good. I think it feels natural for people to gossip, but they don't recognize that as soon as you gossip about somebody, everyone recognizes that, well, I can't really trust this person anymore because they're probably going to gossip about me, right? And then it creates a culture of no trust. Fascinating. So I want to respect your time. I know we only have a short amount of time today. I'm curious, you've gone through all of these different transitions. What are you trying to accomplish in this next phase now that you're going to get, you know, you're pretty close to getting your top certification in coaching? What are you most passionate about right now? And what are you pursuing?
That's a very good question. I have lots of passions, so I try to kind of be productive and try to do whatever, you know, coach myself as well, you know, like, which is a practice that most coaches are good at. But it is okay also to get coached, you know, like or mentored, you know, and part of getting the MCC, there is mentorship in it. My ultimate goal will be twofold, obviously, to continue to coach in leaders in general. I get lots of personal, you know, satisfaction, and I feel like I have something to share and contribute. But I want to also have a practice for people getting into coaching. Because as you know, there is a big interest these days in the profession of coaching. And it's a big business, big industry, you know, like a billion-dollar industry. So I feel like it's going to be a good pivot, or if I consider it a pivot, it might not be a real pivot. It might just be different aspects of coaching. But I feel there is a great demand that can be used for the betterment of the coaching profession. And my theme is coach the person and the problem. As you know, there is a very famous book by one of the founders in coaching called Coach the Person, Not the Problem. But if you look at it from the continuum, if you will, of coaching and consulting, it's going, or coaching and mentorship, it's going to be coach the person and the problem. So I want to dig deeper into that.
That's great. So coaching coaches, but not just limiting it to coaching. It's actually advising and helping solve problems, mentoring.
Yes, because most coaches, especially if they are transitioning, like they leave their day job and they want to have a coaching business, coaching firm, they need to also build a practice. There is a business element to it. Like you can be the best coach in the world, but not have a thriving business. Like, how can you get people to know about your offers? How can you get people to know what you can do for them, whether it's the individual or the organization? Like team coaching, for example, is a great professional development, not just for people, but for working together, as teams and managing conflict and having a positive, healthy work environment. So helping coaches to not just be great coaches, but also have a thriving business. So they live their life by design, not by default, and enjoy what they do and be happy.
That's excellent. I'm curious, since we have a few more minutes, you bring up something really interesting of how there's the coaching business is growing. And there's a lot of layoffs right now. Let's just be blunt. A lot of companies are going through transition and making cuts and making decisions with AI are becoming more prevalent. I'm really curious, how would you give some generic advice or coach someone who's going through a layoff right now or going through that type of transition where they need clarity that's been a little bit forced on them as a forcing function?
Yeah. No, very good question. I've been working on that topic for a long time. It's not new. I actually have a LinkedIn Live that session that was dedicated to what to do if you are get laid off and what to do to prepare. Like if you hear about the layoffs and you know that it might hit, how can you prepare yourself? So it's kind of two related but separate, because if you are still employed, gainfully employed, what can you do today to be strong, resilient? So if it hit, you know how to hit the ground running. You're not gonna sit in the corner and cry. But if you're laid off and you got that news already, how can you not let the emotions and negativity overtake you and try to isolate the sense of grief? There is grief, obviously. There is sometimes people feel like they don't know themselves, like their identity is so much wrapped around their jobs. So how can you acknowledge, give yourself time to grieve the loss and think in a practical way? Ideally, if you can work with a coach to help, kind of bring objective thinking and not be overtaken by negative emotion, to what can I do? Like, how is my resume? Is my resume ready? Does it reflect my skills and experience in a positive way, in a comprehensive way? And then LinkedIn, because if you think of your LinkedIn profile, it's like a landing page. Any recruiter or any even friend or acquaintance that you say, I'm looking for a job, any ideas, they will look you up on LinkedIn. So do you have a professional picture? Do you have a professional background? The banner on top, like, is it easy for people to contact you? And then thinking of some of the greatest achievements that you had in your career and writing maybe a case study without revealing anything that's confidential, but writing a case study to showcase your skills. So I like to leverage LinkedIn as a landing page and let people know how you can help them. What have you done? And then with that, I work on, and I do that whether it's a layoff or just someone wants to get higher in the organization or are experiencing self-doubt or imposter syndrome symptoms, to work on a success inventory. So just to bring a piece of paper or use, notes or anything on your laptop and write down from the time as far as you can remember all the successes that you had in your life, in sports, in hobbies, in college. And if you're a parent, raising your kids, like all the positive things, the accomplishments you had as a person, as a human being. And that's your success inventory. And that will keep you strong the more you think about it. And these things are not a one-time thing. You have to kind of repeat, embrace it every day. It's transformative. It's like, because you need to be internally feeling strong and happy about yourself so you can do well in interviews, present yourself in the best possible light.
That's such timeless advice. People I'm seeing right now need that encouragement where it's confidence. A lot of them are really qualified in this, the confidence that will get them. And I completely agree and resonate. That's excellent advice. If you have time, maybe we could have some fun, just some rapid fire questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yes.
Okay. So what's your favorite leadership book?
Yeah, that's a big question. I like the concept of power, to have power, be in your power. And one of the very good books that came out last year was written by Jenny Rometty, the ex CEO of IBM, and it's called Good Power. It's a very good book.
I haven't read it. I'll put it in my list. That's great. Okay, favorite dessert?
Ice cream.
Okay, good. Flavor? What flavor?
I like praline.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's
Chocolate
a good one.
is good as well.
Okay. What's the worst advice everyone gives someone? Like the worst generic
gosh.
advice.
Oh, that's hard. You do you.
Yeah, not a great one. Not a great one. Doesn't work all the time, especially if the person's not doing that well. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're not helping them,
Okay, favorite way to take a day off. What do you do?
What do I do if I have a day off?
Yeah, favorite way to relax.
I play with my granddaughters. I have two granddaughters. They are amazing. And I
How old?
forget everything when I'm with them, like everything is out and I'm just enjoying my time with them.
How old are they? Do you mind if I ask?
7 and 10.
Oh, that's awesome. My daughter's 4.5, and it's just the most fun. That's like such a fun age, right? They're just a blast.
Yes, they are amazing.
Okay. Any piece of advice you wish everyone could know right now? Like any just good piece of advice or a word of encouragement for the group?
Self-care. Focus on yourself. If you're in a good place, you can help others and you can help the community, help your family, and you can do great in your career. So start with self-care.
Awesome. And then what can my audience or me do to support you in whatever you're trying to accomplish with coaching coaches and continue your executive coaching practice? How can we follow you and what steps can we take to support you in your journey?
Well, thank you. LinkedIn is a great place. So sharing, you can follow me, you can connect with me, you can send articles or podcasts. It's a great environment to be in. Lots of great content and a way for people to connect across industries, across timelines, and it's really great.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thank you, Laura, so much for taking the time today. It was really a pleasure talking to you, and I hope we get to do it again sometime soon.
Thank you, Devon. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye. I will stop the recording.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, so